Okay, a note came up that says we are now streaming live. Okay, then I would like to call the February meeting of the City of Akron Housing Appeals Board to order. Board members, you received the minutes of our previous meeting in the mail. Are there any changes, additions, corrections, or comments to the minutes? Mr. York, I have a question. Carol Schneider, one of our board members, was present at the last board meeting. She was present as a non-voting member at that meeting. She is not listed on the minutes as members present, should she be? She was present, but she was present as a non-voting member.
The minutes could note that she was present as an alternate or a non-voting member.
Okay, thank you.
That would be accurate. Sure.
Can that change be made to the minutes, Jody? Any other changes, comments, additions, or corrections to last month's minutes? If not, they stand approved as amended. Mr. York, when our first person comes in, you will swear in everybody that's going to be testifying this evening. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, then Mr. Greger, would you admit our first person?
I'm going to bring in Mr. Drennan for 30 Brookside, 30 East Brookside. One moment.
Mr. Drennan, are you with us? Mr. Drennan, can you hear us? You are muted.
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you now. Thank you.
Okay, sorry about
Mr. York.
Mr. Drennan, do you have video capability?
I'm trying to figure it out right now. I'm doing it on a I'm using a phone.
Okay. There might be an icon that shows a camera if it's a smartphone.
No, I don't.
Okay. We can go forward without if it's okay with the chair.
Certainly.
All right. Mr. Drennan, I'm going to ask you to raise your right hand. And also any city staff, any housing division staff who are going to be testifying this evening. If you could unmute your microphones and raise your right hand. Mr. Graham, you want to unmute your microphone?
You can unmute your mic on your phone. Ah, okay, yeah, just come over here with me.
All right. Do each of you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth and nothing but the truth?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
I do.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Jody, could you present the first case, please?
Review case 5845, 30 East Brookside Avenue. At the Housing Appeals Board meeting of January 19th, 2021, the board granted an extension until February 16th, 2021 to initiate probate, provide a written plan, keep the property secure, keep the property free of refuse, and schedule an interior inspection. The property was inspected this morning at 9 a.m. The only progress had been there was more demolition work that had occurred at the property.
Hey, thank you. Mr. Drennan,
Yes, ma'am.
where do we stand with probate?
I am waiting on a letter in the mail from the mortgage company, U.S. Bank, I talked to them last week. They're sending me a letter of assumption. I got to fill out and send back to them. I should be receiving that in the next 7 to 10 days. As of today, that's what the lady, when I spoke to her, said. She said as of the 16th, 7 to 10 days from that date, I would receive the letter.
Okay, and can you or Mr. York, one of you, tell me what that means?
A letter of assumption, as far as I understood, was just I would assume the mortgage, and then therefore after, I guess it would be mine. There is no will or anything like that. So I'm not sure if it still would have to go to probate or.
Yeah, I guess just for my recollection, Mr. Drennan, you're not the owner of this property, correct?
No, it's my wife that's deceased now.
Yeah, yeah. So assuming the mortgage, what that really does is it puts you on the hook, so to speak, for paying the mortgage, but it does not affect the ownership of the property. I think what the board wants to do is make sure that you've taken steps to become the owner, if that's what you intend to do. Assuming the mortgage would not affect the property ownership, I should say.
Okay.
I think one of the things that the board suggested or requested at our last meeting was that you get some legal advice, so that you knew what was what, and I'm not sure you've done that.
My girlfriend, she's pregnant with my child or whatnot. Her mom actually works for a law office downtown, and
Okay,
she's been kind of pointing me in the direction of, because I brought the letter of assumption up to her. She said that's the start of it. I still need to contact an estate attorney.
yeah, so you have plans to do that?
Yeah, I'm not sure which one to go with quite yet, I guess I could say. I'm not.
Well, I'm not sure the board's going to want to sit around and just give you time to sit around. Any
Right.
questions from board members?
Has he talked to an actual lawyer at all?
Apparently not.
Okay. Well, that may be a good place to start. They do free consultations.
Madam Chair,
Yes, sir.
I believe Mr. Dobberton is having trouble connecting to his audio. He's trying to speak and is not he's not muted, so it's something on his end. He has raised his hand, so we are trying to get him in here.
Yeah, Mr. Dobberton, in the meantime, can you put something in the chat if you have a question? Okay, we will wait for that question. Any other questions from anyone else? So, Mr. Drennan, if I understand correctly, it is your intention to take ownership of this property, is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
And then you want to do what with it? I think you've told us in the past, but let's get it on for this month's record.
Ultimately, I wanted, I mean, I kind of guess I wanted to see about turning it into a sober house, because that's what my wife did before she passed away. She was a substance and alcohol abuse counselor.
Mhm.
So I kind of guess once I'm done with that, I'd open it up to sober living or whatever. I'm not.
Okay, do you know what needs to be done to the property to bring it into compliance? Is that correct?
Yes, I have Blendon Sons coming out next Tuesday, the 23rd at 10 a.m. to inspect the wiring and to look at the furnace and tell me what needs to be done with that.
Okay, Jody, can you remind me what all needs to be done to this property? Again,
Okay. Most of the rooms are down to the studs, no hot water tank, clean and service the furnace, clean and seal the rear room foundation. Mold and mildew in the basement bathroom. Disconnected drain from kitchen sink. Repair electric with a permit. Clean and seal, smoke damage. Repair steps to second floor. Install handrails. The upstairs bathroom, the shower surround, missing the bathroom sink, missing windows, repair siding, trash and rubbish in the rear yard, missing fascia wrap, trim paint, rear deck lattice, and rear downspouts.
and you have that list, Mr. Drennan, that Ms. Forrester just read?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and you have the funds to be able to make all these repairs?
Yes, I just opened a credit card for Home Depot. I'm gonna go to Lowe's and try them too. And
Mr. Dobberton, if you were speaking, I could not hear you. Mr. Drennan, if you were given time by the board and you do get ownership of the property, how long do you think it would take to comply with all the orders?
at bare minimum, my goal is to have ownership and it completely livable by May. So anywhere from 60 to 90 days after I get the ownership figured out.
The other. Thanks for the picture, Jody.
When I'm finished with all the demolition and finished tearing out the walls and taking all the trash materials from inside the house, my friend runs his own hauling company, and as soon as I get that done, he's gonna come remove all the stuff from the property, from the backyard, inside the house.
Okay, I'm sorry we can't hear from Mr. Dobberton. If there's a question that you have for Mr. Drennan, if you could put it in the chat, we will relay the question to him, Michael.
Madam Chair, I'm going to try to put him back in the waiting room and then bring him back in and see if he has another opportunity to connect to audio.
Okay, thank you. In the meantime, any other questions? One of the things that we requested was a written plan of what you would do when you would do it, kind of what would happen in 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. Do you have that plan for us?
Yeah, but I don't have it with me right now. I'm in the car. It's at my cousin's house.
Okay, that doesn't help us a lot.
Now we can hear you, Mr. Dobberton.
Okay, thank you very much. I apologize.
Mr. Dobberton, do you have questions for Mr. Drennan or comments? I will say I'm a little disappointed. One of the things that we asked was that you get some legal advice, which apparently you have not yet done. We asked for a plan on how you would proceed with repairs, and we don't have that. So I'm a little disappointed.
Yeah, I even explained the written plan as I usually do, month by month.
I have some of what, it's not really written down, but I have an idea. I need to finish the demo, and then I need to have the exterior, interior of the property clean. I already had a exterior side door installed. Then I need to have the windows installed. I need to have the electrician come out. And then when I get done with that, I need to have the chimney duct swept for the furnace and the 2 chimney stacks that's there. I need to have the furnace serviced. I need to have whatever plumbing needs to be repaired. I need to have somebody come in with a permit. Jody had said last time to install a hot water tank. And
Okay. Everything sort of hinges on your getting ownership of the property. And you've not begun that process, is that correct?
I contacted the bank, figured that would help me, but obviously not.
You need an attorney to go into the court system and begin the probate process, because I personally wouldn't put a lot of money into a property that I wasn't sure I was going to own when my checks cleared.
I forget who had suggested it last time, but somebody had just suggested contacting the Akron Bar Association, I believe.
That was probably me, Mr. York.
Okay.
I would do that.
Okay.
I mean, at the end of the day, if the repairs get done and the board's satisfied and the housing division satisfied, I don't know if whether or not he owns the property is a sticking point. The problem may be, he needs to pull permits for a lot of these repairs. I don't know how the county feels about issuing permits to non-owners. It sounds like he's about to assume a mortgage. And I would be shocked if a lender would give money or extend money, or if you need money for these repairs, to a non-owner. So you may run into issues aside from having to actually fix the property. If for some reason, I'm speaking to the board now, if for some way he's able to pull off these repairs and this property's picture perfect at the end of the day, I don't know that the board would have a problem with that, regardless of whether he owns it or not.
Good point.
That's just,
He wouldn't get a loan if he doesn't own the property.
I agree. I would be shocked. But he's said that there's apparently some bank wants him to sign the mortgage and take over. I think you really should consider contacting the Akron Bar Association, explaining your situation, and see if they can recommend an attorney to you, sir.
Okay.
And I wouldn't wait. I mean, you've lost a month at this point, and you need to take some action.
What time do they open? Or is there like...
Probably at 9 o'clock.
Are there other questions or comments from the board, or is there a motion?
I don't know. It just seems like there's a lot of what ifs. You
Yeah,
know,
but, okay. Comment. If, yes, building on what Mr. York said, and I always take what he said to heart, our job is to make sure that this property is not a detriment to the neighborhood or the city. My personal opinion is I wouldn't put money into it unless I was assured of owning it. But if he brings it up to code, I would like to see it come off our list, whether he owns it or not. I just wouldn't personally agree with his viewpoint, but as far as the city's concerned, just making it a code property should be our only concern. Thank you, John.
Ms. Forrester, the property is worth rehabbing?
Yes, the property is structurally sound and it is salvageable.
Thank you. Is the board considering a motion just to? Oh, I guess I won't put words in boards.
Well, I would entertain 30 to 60 days to allow him to make more progress and finally find himself a probate attorney. As long as he continues to make progress. Maybe we should go month by month waiting on the progress.
I'd agree with that.
May I say something?
Please.
I kind of have a problem with it because we already gave an extension of 30 days to try to begin the process and it wasn't started. So my concern is we're stretching out time when the first 30 days were very crucial in initiating a legal process and it wasn't done. I know the intentions may seem to be well that are presented, but the most important part was beginning the legal process and it wasn't done. It was just pushed to the side.
Well, once again, building on John's comment, probably the most important part of it is not the probate, but getting the work done. Now, I'm upset that he did not come back with any kind of written plan. I always tell the citizens that I don't care if they bring it back on a cocktail napkin. They just need a 30, 60, 90-day written plan with an assurance that they have the funds to carry it out. But
Mr. Drennan, I'm kind of reading the mind of Mr. Dobberton and where he might be going with a motion. If you were granted 30 days time to start getting some legal advice and moving down that alley, and also continue working on the property, what could you get done in 30 days?
I could have the demolition finished, all the debris from the front, interior, exterior cleaned up, windows installed. The electrician's coming out next Tuesday, so see what he says about that.
Okay.
The stairs, I would have to call a siding company because in the bathroom there's
Right now, and just make sure what you're telling us is something that you believe you can get done in 30 days. Don't just tell us things to make us happy, because we'll be less happy if you come back in 30 days and don't have them done.
and I would look more for interior improvements. But
Jody, do we have issues with the roof? I'm sorry, I don't remember.
I don't believe that there are any issues with the roof.
Thank you. Okay,
There
Mr.
was-
Dobberton. Oh,
there
go ahead.
was some mold and mildew. Can he get that cleaned up?
yes, that's part of the demolition. That part of the half a bathroom in the basement's getting tore out.
Mr. Dobberton, do you want to throw a motion out there and we can see where it goes?
Sure. I'm always willing to embarrass myself. All right. Review case 5845, the property at 30 East Brookside Avenue. I move we grant an extension to the March meeting to allow, I usually say the owner, but we'll say Mr. Drennan, to complete some demolition, which includes both bathrooms, to remove all debris, to install new windows, to get a quote on upgrading the electrical system, keep the property secure, free of debris, and schedule an interior inspection before our next meeting.
Mr. Dobberton, before we get a second on that,
Yeah,
did you want, as was your request last time, written
Oh.
plans for the rest of the,
thank you. I spent too much time trying to get my audio working, yes. And a written plan for 90 days, the next 30 days, the 30 days after that, and 30 days after that, which can always be adjusted. We just want to see that you have a plan and you can see that you have the money to complete the plan.
Okay. What day in March is the next?
all right,
Here.
wait, you're just a little bit ahead of us here, sir.
Yeah,
Is there a second on the motion?
Second.
Second.
I'm sorry.
thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Now, is there any discussion?
I have a question.
Sure.
I'm sorry. But if this body was to order it to be demolished, and he did proceed with legal advice before the demolition would happen, could he not request another review with all the legal papers in proper procedure? I'm just asking this question because it's drawing out in this particular situation.
You're asking, Ms. Jones, that if the board makes a decision that it should be demolished, and he then becomes the owner, would this case come back before the board for reconsideration?
Yes.
No, it would not.
Okay.
The board's order is to the property. It really is to the condition of the property. And once you make a decision on this property, that decision can be appealed to the court.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. York. Any other discussion on the motion? The motion is to grant an extension till our March meeting to allow Mr. Drennan time to get some legal advice and look into probate, look into becoming the owner of the property. At the same time, complete the demolition, debris cleanup, get windows installed, get a quote from the electrician, come present us with a 30, 60, 90-day written plan, keep the property secure, free of refuse, and schedule an interior inspection. All in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
I
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Mr. Drennan, our next meeting is March 16th. Part of what the board asked was the 30, 60, 90-day written plan. Since we are not meeting in person for you to give that to us, we would ask that you send it by email to Ms. Forrester.
Okay.
See, she
Or
can-
if he has Ms. Forrester to come out and look at it several days in advance of the meeting, he could hand it to her.
Somehow it needs to get to Ms. Forrester so that if he emails it to her, it's easier for her to just forward it on to us, though.
Yep, this is true.
Well, can I schedule my inspection now with Ms. Forrester?
That's up to Ms. Forrester.
It's best for you to go ahead and wait and contact me 2 weeks prior to the hearing.
Okay.
So, Mr. Drennan, do you understand what it is that we're looking for before our next meeting?
Yes, ma'am.
Okey dokey, and you think you can get all that done?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, then I will say good luck to you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Drennan.
good luck.
I usually say be careful driving home, but it doesn't apply anymore.
He's driving though.
Yeah.
Hey, Madam Chair, I'm going to bring in Mr. McGee now for 601 Talbot Avenue.
Mr. York, are you ready for Mr. McGee?
Yes.
I am. Emily.
Looks as though Mr. McGee might be having some audio issues.
What's the property address for Mr. McGee?
It's the appeal case, 601 Talbot.
Talbot, got it. Thank you.
Hey, Mr. McGee, are you with us?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Mr. York.
Okay, great.
Mr. McGee, you're counsel for the owner on this property, correct? Zeus Properties?
That's correct.
Okay. Ms. Williams, he doesn't need to be sworn.
Okay.
Mr. McGee, the other witnesses have been sworn.
So I wanted to request a continuance of this hearing, if I may. I think that would be the,
And why exactly is that, Mr. McGee?
so there's several reasons. The first reason is that I only received notice of the specific date of this hearing about 5 days ago, and I need more time to prepare. The second reason is that the current tenant that's in the property is an extremely hostile person. She's made threats against my maintenance staff and myself, and we cannot get into the property in order to evaluate any of the alleged housing code violations to determine whether we agree or disagree with them, to determine which ones we would like to fix. Maybe none, maybe all of them. I don't know. We can't get in. And which ones that we would like to contest. And then the third reason is we've actually tried to remove the tenant for non-payment of rent. She hasn't paid rent in 3 months, and some other things, including the threats against the staff. And as I'm sure you're aware, the Centers for Disease Control have issued a moratorium on evictions, and the Akron Municipal Court has actually dismissed the eviction and will not allow an eviction of the tenant. And the dismissal was because of the moratorium, not for some other reason or missing paperwork or anything like that.
Okay, I guess you indicate that you just recently got notice of this meeting and need more time to prepare. I guess my concern would be you got the orders in December. If you had an issue with the orders, you should have talked to somebody from the housing division, Mr. Graham or somebody, in December, not waited until it was elevated to come before the board.
Well, ma'am, actually, that's a good point, and I did exactly that. I sent a letter to the department explaining that I could not get into the property because of all these reasons that I just explained to you, and that I requested that I'd be given more time in order to either get the tenant to calm down, which has since not happened, or get the tenant out so that I could get in there and, like I said, evaluate, repair or not repair, whatever, use my judgment on what I thought needed to be repaired and what needed to be contested. So that letter was sent in, I believe, mid-December, just a couple of days after I received the notice.
Okay, I'm sorry, you did send a letter December 17th.
Yes, ma'am.
If
And
I
then
may, we haven't read it, either of the appeal cases into the record.
I'm sorry, Ms. Forrester, you are correct. Would you do that, please? Thank you.
Should probably just read the first one for the time being.
Appeal case 0520-601 Talbot Avenue. This property was inspected on December 4th, 2020 in response to a complaint. Violations of the City of Akron Environmental Health Housing Code, Chapter 150 were noted, and orders dated December 9th, 2020 were served. An appeal of the orders was received on December 24th, 2020. And to add to that, we did receive a letter at the same time we received the appeal. I made numerous attempts to contact Mr. McGee by phone. I left him a message. He left me a message. I left him another message explaining to him when would be the best time to contact me. He called and left a message outside those parameters. I called and left him another message.
Well, that sounds like fun.
Yeah. So that letter to discuss the violations was received with the appeal of the orders.
So you never made contact to discuss the orders?
Correct.
Well, the contact was a lot of voicemails back and forth, just like Ms. Forrester said. We attempted to get together to discuss it. We're not able to do it. I don't think that the letter and the notice of appeal were sent in the same envelope, but they were sent at about the same time.
We received them on the same day.
Mm-hmm.
But Mr. McGee, it is your responsibility to make sure that contact happens, just as it is my responsibility to ask for a raise order if the contact doesn't happen. So when you're given some parameters, it's your responsibility to see that you make that contact within those parameters.
Okay, although
Secondly,
Mr. Dobberton, just remember that this is an appeal of orders. This property is not under consideration for a raise.
yet,
Well, it won't be. It won't be with these proceedings. This is
No.
just an appeal of orders
on tonight.
forever.
But the other thing is, over the many years I've been sitting on this board, I've had any number of people get a law enforcement official because the owner has the right to inspect his property with any kind of reasonable notice, and if they won't let you in, usually law enforcement will enforce that. So just saying that you can't get in because the tenant is recalcitrant doesn't fly for very long.
Well, and I will say that the case we're looking at right now, which is appeal case 520, these orders are all, you don't need to get in, I don't think. You don't need to be in the property to.
Is that the one that includes like window screens?
This is screening, broken windows, and exterior surface.
So, I'm just asking for a continuance here. I mean, if we're going to get into the merits of it, I can tell you what my defense is on the merits as best I can if the court or if the board is not going to give me a continuance. But I'm requesting a continuance on both of these at this time.
Yeah, before we get into the merits, I think it would make sense for the board to make a decision on that. The city, and this is John York, Akron Law Department. The city's not strongly opposing the continuance. We would just point out that the notice was sent, the notice of tonight's hearing was sent in compliance with the ordinance, which actually requires notice to be mailed no later than 5 days before the meeting. And Mr. McGee sent an email to Ms. Forrester last week acknowledging that he got it 6 days before the meeting. So we would just point out that the notice wasn't late and leave it at that. And it's at the board's discretion whether or not to continue these matters.
Yeah, and Mr. York, I wasn't claiming that it was late or that you missed the deadlines or anything like that. I'm just asking for reasonable continuance.
I understand. I just wanted to point that out for the board.
Yep.
Yep.
Thank you, John. board members, we're looking right now at appeal case 520. And Mr. McGee is requesting a continuance for case 520. Any thoughts?
Well,
No,
the
I'm sorry.
point that they're all external orders that could be addressed tonight and possibly corrected without the tenants being cooperative.
Well, even if they're exterior orders, I mean, the tenant still lives there, and she comes out of her house all the time. I mean, she can scream and yell at me if I'm standing in the driveway or on the front porch just as much as if I was, inside the house. She makes threats. I guess that's sort of on the merits, but I'm just asking for continuance of both of these, a reasonable continuance. I'm not asking for 6 months or anything like that, so that I can either get in and fix what needs fixed, because what I need to do is evaluate the notice that was sent to me at the property so that I can look at, say, item number 1 and say, I agree, I'll do it, or disagree, I'll do it anyways, or, it shouldn't be done, and I want to contest it. I just haven't had an opportunity to do that for the reasons that I mentioned. So a
Well,
reasonable continuance is requested.
By your appeal, you are appealing the order's validity. So you were saying when you filed the appeal that you believed them not to be valid. And now you want us to grant you a continuance so you can go look at them and decide whether they are or not?
Well, respectfully, I disagree with some kind of statement being imputed to me if I file an appeal. There's lots of different reasons that a party could file an appeal. It could be procedural. Someone might agree that the repairs need done, but there was a procedural defect in the notice. So there's lots of reasons that somebody might file a notice of appeal other than a disagreement on the merits of a specific item. In this case, I haven't, I'm not going to repeat it myself over and over again, but I haven't been able to get in because of these problems with the tenant. And also the fairly short notice within the rules, but nevertheless, 5 days on all of these items is very little time to be able to prepare a defense.
And you would like, I'm sorry, I don't have the email up. Mr. McGee, you are asking for a continuance until what date?
Until March 31st.
And that
So
is
would be
past the moratorium on evictions?
that'd be the last day. Yeah.
All right, board members, we are considering the request for a continuance on appeal case 520. Any comments, any thoughts? Is there a motion one way or another on granting the continuance?
I say no, but
Okay, there's one thought.
because we already know that violations. I mean, Jody's already inspected and made the violations. It is not our
Well,
fault. that she
Mr.
gets
Graham
sick,
has inspected.
So,
Both of us. On this particular case, it was Mr. Graham's orders, correct?
yeah.
Well, Kathy, to move it forward for discussion, do you want to make a motion to deny the request for a continuance?
I can, I guess.
That'll just get it out for discussion.
Right, right. Okay, appeal case 0520-601 Talbot Avenue. I make a motion that we deny the appeal.
No,
or
just deny
for the
deny the
continuance.
request for a
For
continuance.
continuance, okay.
Is there a second on the motion?
Second.
Now, any discussion?
What? May I say something?
Yes,
So basically, the screening on the doors, the window openings directly, those missing broken window glasses and things, those things were things that were brought up in the past, exterior wise. And am I correct in assuming that no attention was given to those at all in order to appease?
Well,
Mr. McGee has, well,
we need, I think.
we're
Madam
looking
Chair,
at the
before you get before
continuance
the
now.
merits,
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I believe personally, looking at this, that we should deny the continuance because, everything was valid and it was written and it was served and he did receive it.
Any other discussion? Okay, we have a motion to deny the request for a continuance of appeal case 520. All in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, we are denying the request for the continuance, so we can move forward with appeal case 520 now on the merits.
I would just like to add to the record for the Housing Division, from our point of view, as always, clarification of any order can be provided verbally or by providing a copy of the inspector's notes to anyone who requests it. And the timeframes on our orders are always up for discussion. We live in Ohio, we know what the weather does, so we can always grant additional extensions for compliance with those orders to allow the owner to complete repairs within the parameters of the weather.
Thank you. Mr. McGee, I think you felt that the orders were a little vague. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Graham, you're with us this evening, I believe.
Yes, just one moment. He'll be using my camera.
Okay, thank you.
I think before you hear from Mr. Graham, you probably want to hear from Mr. McGee for an explanation on the actual particulars about what's vague about the orders.
Well, but I just wanted Mr. Graham with us so that he was.
This is yours right here.
Oh, okay. Hi, I'm borrowing Jody's workstation. I'm not set up for it over my.
Thanks, Aaron. Okay, for this case, there were 3 orders. Mr. McGee, one was screening for doors and windows, replace broken or missing window glass, and clean and properly protect all exterior structural surfaces. Basically, I shortcut them, but those were the 3 orders. And what are your concerns about those?
Well, with regard to the window screens, the Akron Housing Code does not require window screens to be on the windows during the winter time. I think it's phrased slightly differently than that. It's there for flies and mosquitoes and things like that. And this is not the insect season, so to speak, in Northeast Ohio. So window screens are not required. There are plenty of window screens for the windows in the house. So I suspect that the tenant took them off the windows and put them in the basement during the winter time, but they're not required to be on the windows during the winter. With regard to the exterior, I don't know specifically what the problem is with the siding or the exterior on the house. If it's claimed that it needs painted, or if there's holes in it, or I don't know if there's some other problem with trim work or things like that. We just had a brand new roof put on this house this past summer. And the trim work up near the roof was all redone and everything. So I don't think there's any problem with the trim, with the downspouts or the gutters. They all work fine. I just don't know what the problem is with the exterior of the house because the notice was very vague on that. And then with regard to the window, the last time that I was there was no broken windows. So if the tenant broke a window, instead of the tenant calling the housing division, the tenant should call me and say, hey, I broke a window, or I'm sorry, this window got broke, my kid broke it or whatever. And we can come over and fix it. But for the tenant to break a window and then call the housing division immediately, it just seems to me to be extraordinarily unfair that the tenant would attempt to co-opt the city of Akron into attacking a property owner when the property owner hasn't been provided advance notice of whatever the problem is, in this case, broken window, and an opportunity to take a look at it and fix it.
Okay, and Mr. McGee, to Ms. Forrester's point, and your questioning about the protecting the exterior of the property, when you got the order, did you attempt to reach Mr. Graham or anybody at the housing division to say, hey, what do you mean?
Yes, so I sent a letter.
Okay, was that when you were back and forth with Ms.
Yes.
Forrester? Okay. And Jody, can you tell me if for this particular case, 520, did the original complaint come from the tenant? As Mr. McGee thinks possibly they broke a window
Right,
and then
I'm
ratted
just
him out.
looking through here. I want to make sure that I get all the proper answers to your questions. The first complaint came from Vince Curry with Fair Housing Advocates.
Okay, so it did not come directly from the tenant.
That is correct. And at no point in time did we receive a phone call from Mr. McGee requesting further explanation. And the letter that I received did not ask for consultation or explanation. It just stated that this was an issue, your orders are vague, I can't do anything until we discuss this further.
Okay, thank you. And can I talk to Aaron for a moment?
Sure.
Thank you.
Good, come back, Aaron.
As you guys play musical chairs there.
Hello, I'm back.
Hello. Okay, to the order on providing screening and Mr. McGee's assumption or assertion that this is not a time of year when we would need screens on windows. What's the story there? Why was that order written?
Yes. On the 4th, I wrote the order because there was a torn screen on the front first floor. Like Jody had mentioned, I'd have no expectation that screens be replaced that time of year, but there would be no reason for the torn screens not to be removed.
Okay, so it was basically repair or remove the torn screen was what you were looking for from.
Exactly, and as Jody had mentioned, we could have clarified that verbally on the phone.
Okay, how about broken or missing window glass?
Time of my inspection on the 4th of last December, I just wrote in my notes there was a broken window in the front first floor. I can't recall if it was cracked or completely broken, but cracked is broken as far as we're concerned with orders.
Do you know which window that was, Mr. McGee?
No, I don't. I can't see it from the street. I mean, I've driven past the house a number of times. I can't see a broken window from the street. So it must be just like a hairline crack or something. And again, the tenant won't let me in the house, very hostile, as I explained before. So I don't know which window it is. And I did call. All of those back and forth phone calls that I had with Ms. Forrester was about both this notice and the other notice that came, I think, maybe a week later or a few days later.
Okay. Mr. Graham, how about clean and properly protect exterior surfaces? What's the issue there?
Both the garage and the siding of the house, which I believe is aluminum siding, there's just a visual signs of peeling paint covering most of the property.
Do you know what he's talking about, Mr. McGee? Peeling paint on the garage and the house siding?
I haven't done a recent inspection because the hostility of the tenant. I haven't been able to be over there. I mean, it's not just going in the house. If I try to walk around the backyard, the tenant's going to see me. If she happens to be at home, if I try to go there when she's not at home, I wouldn't know when she's at home and when she's not. I don't think she has an automobile. I don't think she owns one. And so I can't just drive by and see if her car's in the driveway or not. So that wouldn't help. So I'm not sure where this peeling paint is or how much it is, if it's just a few spots. I haven't seen like peeling paint all over the house. So it's got to be just a few small spots. But again, I wasn't able to get clarification. We made reasonable attempts to get a hold of each other. I operate a business. I make reasonable attempts to return phone calls. Ms. Forrester does too. There's nothing wrong with her attempts to return phone calls. We just weren't able to get a hold of each other, despite very reasonable attempts on both sides to get clarification.
Well, I don't consider 60 days a reasonable attempt. I don't know of anybody I couldn't reach in 14 days instead of 60 days. But
Mr. Graham, talk to me a little bit more about the peeling paint. Where is it? How bad is it? What's the scoop?
Well, I have to admit, I'm going from memory. I don't have a whole lot in my notes. I just have peeling paint on the aluminum from the house and from the garage. Because it was the initial inspection. It's something I may have gone into more detail later if it came to enacting some type of enforcement. But again, all I've done so far is done the initial inspection on December 4th, and then the appeal was filed.
Okay.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Yeah, Dwayne Greger, Housing Administrator. I just wanted to mention, if I could, the Housing Division's position on this first appeal is that we are not necessarily opposed to granting additional time, modifying the compliance date to comply with the orders for the paint and the screening and what may or may not be a broken window, what may be a cracked or broken window, until such time that would be reasonable for weather. What we are opposed to is some type of blanket extension into perpetuity to wait for some unknown date for the owner to get the tenant out of the property. We don't believe that's reasonable. We believe that the owner should be exercising whatever legal remedies he has under the law to gain access to his property to perform repairs.
Yep.
You were kind of in my mind there, Dwayne. I guess what we need to determine is whether the orders were valid, properly served, all that jazz initially.
Madam Chair?
Mr. York.
Thank you. I've got to say that my reading of the code regarding the screens, I think an order issued in December for screens, I would question the validity of that one, only because we have a code section that says screens aren't required in the winter. I think that Housing Division, gave notice as a courtesy to make sure the owner would be aware of the fact that screens are required. But I guess what I'd like to propose is the city would concede that the screening order should not have been issued, and the city housing inspectors can follow up with that in the future. And when it turns to spring and screens are then required, if the screens aren't repaired by that time or in place, then that order can be reissued if the Housing Division feels it's appropriate.
Thank you. And that one was probably a little a little trickier because if I understand Mr. Graham correctly, he wasn't suggesting that they had to have a screen. He was just suggesting that if there was one there, it should be repaired or it could just be removed because of the time of year. But I guess the way the ordinance is written, that was what he was stuck with.
That would have been my intent, yes.
Mr. McGee. Obviously, Mr. Graham was able to get close enough to see the property, to see the items that he saw, that he wrote orders on. And you have difficulty, and it might be because the tenant knows you and has animosity towards you, and so you can't get any closer. Do you agree that there quite possibly is a broken, cracked, whatever window? Or you're not willing to agree that? I'm just asking.
I just don't know. Again, I can't see it from the street, and I can't get any closer than that without risking, you know, the hostility of the tenant. I mean, she threatened my staff with violence. So I mean, she's a really hostile person. So I can't agree that there's a window when I don't know if there's a window broken or not. I guess what Mr. York was proposing was that we kind of wait until the spring for these items, because even if the siding needs repainted or somehow repaired, it can't be done now because of the weather anyways. I think that's what he was proposing.
I think Mr. Greger was proposing the modification of the order to amend the date of compliance. I was only speaking to the issue of the screens.
Okay.
I conceded that based on my reading of the code, I don't believe the screen order should have been issued.
Madam Chair,
Yeah, Mr. Dobberton, let me ask Ms. Forster
Okay.
one question and then I will get to you. Ms. Forster? You, I believe, were at the property, and I think it has to do with appeal case 521, not 520, but you have been to the property?
Yes,
Did you see the broken window?
yes,
And did you see the peeling paint that Mr. Graham is
yes, I did.
indicating? Okay, thank you,
now, Madam Chair,
Mr. Dobberton.
I would like to suggest that we vacate item 1 for the screening, but deny items 2 and 3 because Dwayne has already said that the department was willing to work with the owner on extensions and weather extensions, but that they are valid orders. So that would be my motion, to vacate 1 but deny 2 and 3.
Madam Chair,
Yes, sir.
John York again. I wonder if Mr. Dobberton might like to consider making a recommendation or as part of his motion, the actual date of compliance to sometime in the spring. Because right now the order has a date on it that says compliance shall be by, and I think it was January 4th. So if you're going to modify the order, maybe you want to consider comply by, fill in the blank with a date.
And Mr. McGee, what was the date that you were asking for the continuance?
March 31st, 31.
Madam Chair,
Yes,
Dwayne Greger again, Housing Administrator. It's not, it is standard practice in the Housing Division for weather extensions for paint items. Compliance dates are normally beginning May 1st to allow sufficient time to have a number of 60-degree days in a row where painting is feasible.
Yeah, and that continuance that I was requesting was the March 31st date. Some years we get a nice warm March, and other years we get a really cold March, and we're still getting snowstorms on March 31st. So I think probably May would be a better idea for the paint.
So, Mr. Dobberton, you are going to make a motion that we uphold the appeal on item 1, deny the appeals on item 2 and 3, but allow an extension for compliance. to
Extended
the
compliance
renewal.
date till May 31st. Right.
Okay, do you want to throw that motion out there?
Here it comes. Appeal case. Appeal case 0520, the property at 601 Talbot Avenue. I move that we vacate order number 1 dealing with screening and extend the compliance date on orders number 2 and 3 until May 31st.
Is there a second?
Second. Second.
Second.
Any okay, we got
Can't
plenty.
hear. I can't hear.
Any discussion? Okay, all in favor of the motion, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention? Motion carries. Okay, are you all right with appeal case 520, Mr. McGee? As all right as you're going to be.
Yeah. If you're asking me if I agree with everything, no. But if you're asking me if I have anything more to say, no, I guess I don't have anything more to say.
Okay, so much for case 520. Now, appeal case 521.
Appeal case 0521, 601 Talbot Avenue. This property was inspected on December 21st, 2020 in response to a complaint. Violations of the City of Akron Environmental Health Housing Code, Chapter 150 were noted, and orders dated December 21st, 2020 were served. An appeal of the orders was received on January 7th, 2021.
Okie dokie. Mr. McGee has requested a continuance on appeal case 521. And
Yes, and I would like to adopt all of my previous statements and arguments from the previous case into this case so that you don't have to listen to me saying all those things all over again, and request a continuance of this case.
this case, however, many of the orders are interior orders.
Right. And because of the COVID restrictions, I think he has a valid point.
Although I think
Just pick a date.
his point is less strong on COVID restrictions, more strong on crazy tenant, I believe, but.
Well, makes it, can't evict the tenant because of COVID restrictions.
Right.
Yeah.
So are you making a motion, Mr. Dobberton?
That's, he asked for March 31st. We almost have to go then till the April meeting.
Madam Chair,
No, it doesn't come back
Okay.
for
No?
us, Mr. Dobberton. Mr. Gregor.
I'm sorry, I'll wait until it's time for discussion. Thank you.
Oh, well, let's
Mr.
get the
Dob-
motion
I
right.
think what Mr. Dobberton was suggesting is to consider the April 20th meeting, considering Mr. McGee was seeking an extension until March 31st.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
So is that a motion, Mr. Dobberton?
I'll make it. Appeal case 0521, the property at 601 Talbot Avenue. I move we grant the owner an extension until the April meeting to allow them to address the orders.
No,
Second.
no, wait.
No.
No, it's a continuance to hear the appeal.
I mean, oh, Just a
Yeah.
continuance to hear it. Okay. I
What is
move
it
we
for?
grant a continuance to hear the appeal until our April meeting.
I second that.
Any discussion? Mr. Gregor?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Dwayne Gregor, Housing Administrator. I'd like to make note that the Housing Division does have some concerns regarding one particular order. On the order to comply, Ms. Forrester can add any additional that she might have concerns about. But we have received follow-up complaints reference to this property that the furnace is still having issues. There was a furnace order issued to have it cleaned and serviced by a licensed HVAC contractor. We feel that it would not be acceptable to have a non-functional or subpar functioning furnace in winter, and that granting a continuance on this without addressing the furnace issue would not follow our duty to protect the health, safety, and welfare of the residents. Thank you.
Forrester, do you have anything to add?
At this time, that would be my main concern too. That was the initial complaint was regarding the furnace. Mr. Graham was not able to gain access to inspect the furnace at that time. The tenant did file a follow-up complaint regarding the furnace, and that's why I ended up inspecting the property. Mr. Graham was out of the office for a period of time. As his supervisor, I scheduled and conducted the inspection. The furnace was functional at the time of my inspection, but the furnace is very old. It isn't repaired. The blower motor was extremely loud on the furnace, and is my recommendation. I strongly recommend that it be cleaned and serviced and inspected by a licensed HVAC contractor, so that we know that it's functioning correctly.
Was the tenant there when you made your inspection, Jody?
Yes, the tenant scheduled the inspection with me, and she was present for the inspection.
And do you think the tenant would allow someone in to repair the furnace?
I think
Mr. McKee has issues.
Contractor that came in and they could produce, documentation that they were with a licensed company, that I do believe the tenant would allow them in.
So part of my problem is that if I send somebody over there, even if he's not with my organization, if he's just an HVAC contractor from some company that I hire, and she strikes him, I'm the one who's going to get sued. Because I sent him in there knowing that she's a violent person, or that she makes threats of violence. She hasn't actually struck anybody, but she threatens to do it. And that's sort of the cause of the vast majority of the problems that I have and that we're discussing now. Is this tenant is virulently hostile, screaming these primal screams. I've got videos of her doing this. And it's just not possible to get somebody in there. Now, Ms. Forrester was able to get in. Good for her. That's probably because the tenant wanted her in there. But when the tenant doesn't want somebody in there, it just doesn't work out. So I understand why the furnace would be concerned. The last time my maintenance staff was there, the furnace was working fine. The tenant had removed the furnace filter and it was laying on the floor. That was the only thing that needed repaired. Or it's not even a repair. I mean, the furnace filter was put back in. That was it. The furnace was generating plenty of heat to keep the house warm.
I'm sorry, Dwayne Gregor again, Housing Administrator. The Housing Division's position on this would be until there's actually an attempt made by a licensed HVAC contractor to make entrance into the property after the tenant's given proper notice. A licensed HVAC contractor can be sent to the property to inspect, clean, and service the furnace. If there's documentation from a licensed HVAC contractor that they are denied entry by the tenant, until then, we have no attempt at compliance. We just have an owner throwing up his hands and saying, this tenant's hostile, and anybody I send over there, she's not going to let in. Until an actual attempt is made to comply with that order, the housing division's position is that no attempt is being made to comply with an order that could potentially be life-threatening to a tenant or an occupant if that furnace is in a state of repair where it goes out in the middle of winter.
Mr. York,
Yes,
I'm sure you're just thrilled to hear from me. We have a motion on the floor right now to grant a continuance on appeal case 521. Has not been voted on yet. It sounds as though, and I don't know because we haven't taken a vote, it sounds as though the board might possibly consider voting for that continuance. However, there's one item that Mr. Greger feels can't wait. So how do we deal with this?
well, if I'm correct, I believe part of the motion is to continue this until the April meeting.
Correct.
I think a middle ground might be to continue the matter until the March meeting. And in the meantime, it sounds like Mr. Greger would like to see Mr. McGee make an attempt to have an HVAC contractor get out there and try and gain entry and do what's necessary. So middle ground could be to bring this back in March and get an update on the HVAC issue and consider a continuance until April at that time. But it sounds like the HVAC issue is pressing enough that it needs to possibly get some attention before April.
But we already know that the other issues need more time than the March meeting. I mean, is it possible to continue that puts the burden back on me to ask for another continuance at the March meeting when we all kind of already know that I'm going to need a continuance before then. Is it possible to continue everything except the furnace to the April meeting and then the furnace be addressed separately at the March meeting, and hopefully I'll be able to have that resolved? The resolution being HVAC contractor goes in there and he either says it works fine or he says X, Y, and Z needs repaired and I get it repaired.
Or can we grant the motion that's on the floor is the continuance until April. If we vote on that, pulling out the furnace issue, can Mr. McGee deal with that, try and get an HVAC person over there to do that? And can he doesn't have to report back to us, can he just deal with housing staff on the furnace?
Absolutely. I'll amend the motion to just,
Well,
I don't know. I'm asking John.
I gotta think this through for a minute. I don't think he can just
Just a suggestion.
yeah, go ahead.
Could you grant a continuance until the March meeting to allow the furnace issue to be addressed? And if the furnace issue is addressed, then an additional continuance can be granted?
I think if the furnace is that big of an issue, I think it needs to be addressed before, well,
it's February.
Dwayne Greger again.
yeah, go Dwayne.
We've already heard testimony from the inspector that was there and saw the furnace. I am not comfortable for us to wait until March. You know, if we grant some type of blanket extension or continuance even for the furnace until March, we're in February now. It is 21 degrees outside now.
Right.
If that furnace goes out tomorrow, then, you know, it gives us the impression that there's nothing that we can do about that until March. I believe that arrangements can be made with an HVAC contractor to look at that furnace within a week.
Well, just because
And I believe that it should.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Wayne, go ahead and finish.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, that's my opinion. That's the one order that was the original complaint. Otherwise, I believe that the housing division is put in a position where we've received several complaints, including a complaint that I received yesterday, that the furnace is still not working properly. And so our response back to the fair housing advocate for this tenant and to this tenant is, well, the board said that your landlord doesn't have to do anything about the furnace until March. Well, by March, it may not be necessary to even have a furnace if the temperature is above the lower threshold to require heat. We're in February and heat's required now. That's my feelings on this matter.
So my response to that is, number one, saying the furnace is not working properly when it's just, so far the evidence from the inspector was that the blower motor was loud. That doesn't mean it's not producing heat. That doesn't mean it's not producing enough heat. It doesn't mean it's not heating the house. There's no testimony that this furnace is not heating the house. A blower motor being loud, might properly be said to not be working properly because it's loud. That doesn't mean it's not producing heat. So I don't want to confuse those two issues with furnace not working versus furnace not producing heat. They're two different things. Second of all, I agree that I could try and get a contractor in there within a few days or a week. If he gets rejected, I can call Mr. Greger. If he gets in and he gives me a report, I can send that to Mr. Greger. That doesn't mean that we can't have this reheard in March while me getting somebody over there within a few days at the same time.
Yeah, Madam Chair, the one point about Mr. McGee is not well taken. The housing division did not order the furnace to be repaired. The housing division ordered the furnace to be inspected, cleaned, and serviced. Okay, so there was nothing to indicate that the furnace needed a repair, but we are not qualified to make that judgment. That's why the order was made to have the furnace. The inspector was concerned enough about the visible condition of the furnace, the age of the furnace, and the sounds that the furnace was making, that she felt that an order to have it inspected by a licensed professional was prudent, and I agree with that. And the housing division feels that is an issue that should be addressed sooner rather than in March.
I would like
in December.
I would like to amend my motion to just continue orders 1 through 7 and leave order 8 alone. And I am understanding Dwayne to say that if the owner gets a qualified serviceman in there, and that if that serviceman says that the furnace is fine and good to go, that order should be satisfactorily complied with for the inspector. Is that what I'm hearing, Dwayne?
Yes, that's correct. If we get a contractor that's licensed, an HVAC contractor that's licensed by the Summit County Board of Building Standards that conducts an inspection, a cleaning and service of that furnace, and determines that it's in working order, then that would be an acceptable compliance with that order.
A written report. Okay. So,
Mr. York.
So I think for purposes of the procedure, it sounds like all the orders except for the furnace should be continued until April. And the appeal hearing for the issue of the furnace should be continued until March. However, if in the meantime, Mr. McGee provides the documentation that the housing division is requiring or whatever else they need to satisfy them, he would not need to appear. The housing staff could just advise the board at the March meeting that he has has satisfied that order.
John,
If he doesn't satisfy that order, then Mr. McGee would be given the opportunity to proceed on his appeal at the March meeting.
John, I would not like to change the appeal date to March. I would like to leave it where it is. Let Mr. McGee attempt to comply with the orders as they are now. If he gets a written report, he can submit it to Jody and she can say, okay, that's good, let it go. Otherwise, he is obligated to act as soon as possible to get that furnace inspection. And for safety and health reasons, it should be as soon as possible, not waiting to hear an appeal until March.
Okay, I'm confused.
Yeah, me too.
Try it again.
The housing division's concern is that we don't want to grant an extension until March 16th for something to be done with the furnace.
Yay.
But I think to Mr. York's point, the next time this board meets is March.
Right.
Mr. York, I think, is assuming that if all of this happens, Mr. McGee will make his very best attempt to get, as quickly as he can, an HVAC person over there to look at the furnace. He will then report back success or failure to Dwayne and Jody. They can then report to us in March, but Mr. McGee is not going to be waiting until 4 weeks from now to decide he's going to send an HVAC person over there.
That's exactly right, Ms. Willings.
So, John, with that understanding, the motion should be what? To continue, to grant the continuance that Mr. McGee is asking for all of the items except the furnace until our April meeting. And then how do we word the furnace issue?
And just leave number 8 alone. It stands.
Was my understanding that if you don't grant a continuance on number 8, then we then have to hear the appeal on number 8?
That's why I'm asking how we word that.
The inspectors.
If we don't grant a continuance, we have to hear it tonight.
We deny it on number 8, which means it's just a valid order, and being just a valid order, Jody or Dwayne can grant a verbal extension to the owner at any time saying, okay, we understand that the tenant took a shot at your repairman and you just can't do it. But we need something, a written report from the contractor saying I attempted to.
But you haven't heard the appeal.
No, we have to
on
then
this.
hear the appeal.
You first have to decide, are you going to continue this? And I would recommend that you consider continuing it until March so Mr. McGee can take his steps. If you don't continue it, you're going to hear an appeal on the merits tonight about at least the furnace.
So we can grant a continuance on items 1 through 7 till April, on item 8 until March, which means that's when we would get our report back from Dwayne and or Jody. But Mr. McGee will attempt to get someone in there as quickly as he possibly can. It's just that we will get our report back in March.
And I'm agreeing on the record to do that.
Okay.
So
Shall
is
I
that correct, John? We will grant a continuance for items 1 through 7 till April and item 8 till March. Is that where we are, John?
Correct. You might want to actually state the dates so that Mr. McGee knows. It's always the third Tuesday of the month, Mr. McGee.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay.
So do you want to resubmit
Restate it.
Yes,
Sure.
please.
Okay. I move, let's see, that would be appeal case 0521, the property at 601 Talbot Avenue. I move we grant an extension on,
You're
Continuance.
moving to grant a continuance.
Continuance.
or a continuous, I'm sorry, of the appeal on orders 1 through 7 until our April meeting,
It's April
And it-
20th.
April 20th. And a continuance of the appeal on order number 8 until our March meeting,
16th.
and 16th. And now we're just looking for a second.
Second,
Second,
Thank you. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor of the motion to grant a continuance of the appeal of items 1 through 7 until our April 20th meeting, continuance on item 8, which is the furnace issue, until our March 16th meeting. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Any opposed?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I'd like to add, while Mr. McGee is still here, I'll also say that the Housing Division will take one added step in this case. I will reach out personally to Vince Curry at Fair Housing Advocates and advise him to advise the tenant to accommodate the inspection of the furnace in any way possible, and that any attempts to thwart that inspection will be deemed as not allowing the owner to even attempt to comply with that order. So
I think that would be very helpful. Thank you.
And you can just, you have my email, so you can send that documentation to me via email once you have it from the HVAC contractor.
Any abstentions? Motion carries. And Mr. Gregor, again, we were thinking the same thing. I had written down here, Mr. Curry from Fair Housing, so I was gonna suggest that. Good luck, Mr. McGee.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
We'll see you in a few months.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye.
What case do we have next?
I'm going to bring in Holly Lucas for the property at 1292 Harmon Avenue.
And Mr. York, you'll make your statement on this one?
Yes.
This is the one Lenita's going to abstain on.
Yes.
Ms. Lucas, I just want to point out that Ms. Jones will be abstaining from participating on this matter as she had done previously. Thank you.
Okay, Jody, you want to present the case?
Review case 5823, 1292 Harmon Avenue. At the Housing Appeals Board meeting of November 17th, 2020, the board granted an extension until February 16th, 2021 to sell the property, keep the property secure, and keep the property free of debris. The property was inspected on February 11th, 2021. The property was found secure and the yard is still clean.
Okay, Ms. Lucas.
Well,
Where-
I come with, I come with, I think, better information than what I have so far. So
Okey-dokey.
that's, we'll start the new year off stronger that way. We have secured a buyer. We have a purchase agreement in place with fully anticipation of the timing, so long as the title company can get us in and everything, which it looks like it, to close before the end of the month. So we were pleased that, I think based on the condition, we were concerned, the previous buyer that we had a very low ball offer, and the appraisal came back higher than I think that buyer anticipated. So they declined to move further since we were then looking for a higher value based on the court's requirement. And so now we have secured a buyer that is willing to go for the 80% of the appraised value.
Okay, Ms. Lucas, I'm going to stop you right here and ask if you could give us your name and address for the
Oh,
record.
I'm sorry. It's Holly Lucas, 1071 Kingsway Street, Alliance, Ohio, 44601.
And your interest in the property is?
The attorney representing the administrator of the estate. Sorry.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And how long do we think this is going to take? I think you said.
And end of the month is the expected closing date.
And the new buyer wants to do what with the property, if you know?
New buyer, to the best of my knowledge, is looking to improve property, obviously based on current conditions. And I believe he is looking to do a fix and flip for then a new owner to come into the property.
Flip it.
Can you tell us the name of the owner?
Certainly. It is Bernard Lewis.
I think, did we mention him last?
He was
Last
one
time.
that we thought was going to be a potential successor buyer since the first one had fallen through, and that we were able to secure that.
Okay. And Jody or Dwayne, do we have a history with Mr. Lewis?
I'm not familiar with the name, no.
Madam Chair, I just, one of the side benefits of doing these meetings via Zoom is I have access to my internal housing computer records, and I just looked up Mr. Lewis and found that we have no case history with him.
Well, that's a really good thing.
I was going to say, that's a good thing then,
That's
right?
if we don't know him, that's a really good thing.
Okay.
And Mr. Lewis is aware of the orders?
Yes, he is aware. Yes. And I've been keeping him apprised most recently of that. And so he knew of the hearing today as well. And he knows of the expectations as far as the securing the property and the improvements.
Okay. Questions from board members? Jody, if we grant this extension and allow time for the sale to complete, does then Mr. Lewis need to come back before us, or do we close this out and you open a new case if you can't work with Mr. Lewis, or what's the deal?
If an extension is granted, then the new owner would need to appear at the next hearing.
That's what I thought. Questions from board members? Is there a motion?
Come on. Okay. Review case 5823, the property at 1292 Harmon Avenue. I move we grant an extension until the March meeting to allow the owner or representative to complete the sale of the property and advise the new owner to appear at our March meeting.
Is there a second? Anybody out there want to second that motion?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
I'll say,
Abstain.
Kathy, was that,
that's my aye.
you were in favor of the motion, or is that an abstention?
No, favor of, I'm sorry.
Okay, and now were there any abstentions?
Abstain.
Thank you. Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Good luck.
Thank you.
What is our next case?
Who's waiting in the wings, Dwayne?
Going to bring Mr. Pfeiffer in for 1755 New York. He's been waiting patiently for an hour and 45 minutes.
Oh, sorry.
What? There's a whole lot we can do.
Oh, there it is.
I know I knocked everything over.
Ready?
Mr. Piper, sorry. Some days go a lot longer than we anticipate.
Oh, yeah.
Mr. York, does Mr. Piper need to be sworn in?
You're muted, Mr. York.
Sorry. Yes, Mr. Pfeiffer, could you please unmute your microphone
Yes.
and raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do swear.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Piper, could you give us your name and address for the record, please?
Yep, my name is Andrew Pfeiffer. My last name is spelled P-F-E-I-F-F-E-R, and my address is 717 Lakewood Boulevard, Akron, Ohio, 44314.
And this is a waiver, is that correct?
Correct.
It is, and I don't know if you want me to just make a general statement of why I decided to join the meeting or how you would like to.
Sure.
Can I just read the case into the record real quick though?
Sorry,
Sure.
Jody. When we're not in person, I forget all this stuff.
Waiver case 5858, 1755 New York Street. There has been no compliance with housing orders issued against this property, which is vacant, heavily vandalized, dilapidated. All lien holders of record have been notified. Let me verify the tax delinquency. It is tax delinquent. The owner has submitted a voluntary demolition waiver stating that the property is in such a state of disrepair as to create a serious hazard to the health and safety of the community. The deteriorated condition of this property is a blighting influence on the neighborhood, and the housing division recommends that it be demolished with cost assessed.
Thank you. And Mr. Piper, if you give us your name and address, please.
Yeah, my name is Andrew Pfeiffer, and my address is 717 Lakewood Boulevard, Akron, Ohio, 44314.
Thank you. Okay, and what do you want us to know about this?
Well, the only reason I joined, I'm a real estate and estate planning attorney here in Akron, and I live on the end of this dead end street, which is Rockaway Street. And this house sits down below me on New York Street, which is actually just kind of a paper street. It's a gravel street that cuts off at the end of Rockaway. And this is the only house that's off that street. And it's been really just a blight and a safety hazard. So since I moved in November of 2016 is when I bought my home. And I have about an acre and a half here on the end of this dead end street. And this house sits on a triple lot, which is about a half acre. And it's been nothing but just fights and drugs and just nonstop. A guy overdosed and died down there. And I went down and helped the family call the police, and they took the body out. And just within the last 3 weeks, so I basically pleaded with the family to sell me this property for 4 years. There was an elderly woman that lives on my street that was her and her husband's first house, and she had some sentimental attachment to it, and I could understand that. And so I just kind of waited it out, and eventually she got to a place where it was getting to be too much to take care of, and I was able to finally purchase it from the family here just recently. And I immediately submitted the waiver because I wanted the house to be demolished. Even since I've submitted the waiver, there's been a fight down there. People go down there and try to do drugs, and they ended up fighting out on the street. A gunfight broke out. My house was shot twice in the process of this gunfight. So I had the cops come out and make a police report and look at the bullet holes in the side of my house and that sort of thing. And I'm just really trying to see this get knocked down as quickly as possible. Now, she said something Jody did about it being tax delinquent. When I closed on the property through Kingdom Title here, they had to bring the taxes, I believe, up. You know, I didn't take the property subject to any tax liens, is my understanding. So they paid the last tax bill. I have a current tax bill for it now that I'm getting ready to pay. I'm also in the process of basically disputing value, because what it's valued at on the auditor's website is close to 3 times what I paid for it. And so I'm going to try to get the tax bill knocked down on it some. It's just a very dilapidated piece of junk house. And I have another neighbor that lives just outside my end of my driveway here that has young kids, and they've complained about it a couple times. And so it's just, because of where it's at and because it's secluded and it's the only house, it's surrounded by trees, and it's down below me, you really can't get down there very easily. And it just attracts a lot of negative behavior in the community. It's a hangout spot, and people want to go there and do heroin and every other kind of terrible thing you can do. And so I just wanted to come out tonight as a citizen who's, you know, I was able to get enough money together to buy the place, thank God, and get it off their hands, and would just really like to see it get knocked down as soon as humanly possible. And didn't know if I made an appeal to the board based off just kind of health and safety concerns, if there was any ability to make it happen faster. Now, my understanding with the waiver demolition program is that, you know, there's a wait, and, you know, the city's going to put up, you know, $20,000 or $30,000 or something in fees to go ahead and get it knocked down. And obviously I don't want to pay that. I very much would like to see the tax dollars be used, because I think it would be a benefit to the whole community. But it's just also a safety concern to me, and like my house getting shot in just the last couple of weeks. I'm not married right now, so thankfully I'm not having to deal with that. But I was just thinking, man, if I had a wife and kids here, this would really be bothering me more than it is even. So I just wanted to make a general appeal for whatever it's worth, and ask if there's any ability of the board to consider doing it a little faster, or if they're, you know, because it's just a safety concern and people are going down there and doing drugs and stuff, I'd kind of like to just see it put to an end. So that's really all I have to say. And
then your intention is just to let it stay vacant. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm just going to add it as a contiguous parcel onto my own. I'm going to probably at some point maybe put a garden down there or something. And, you know, maybe in the future, I'll take the dog down there and throw the tennis ball a little bit or something. And that's about all I really want to get out of that place. But
Mr. Gregor, so his question, is there any way to fast track this at all?
Dwayne Gregor, Housing Administrator. Yes, there are some normal processes that we have to go through, verifying the disconnection of the utilities, the asbestos inspection, and any asbestos abatement. Once those things are completed and it's ready to be released to the contractor, we can review the property to put it on our priority list, and that would only assure that it gets that it likely gets demolished this year. So, you know, we have.
I understand,
we have
sir.
a pretty large caseload. We can prioritize this to the best of our ability for safety reasons. Yes.
I appreciate that. I don't want to take up any more of your folks' time than need be. And I just want to say thank you for hearing me. And I would be very grateful if you would prioritize it. And I think it would be of benefit to our whole street. So
Thank you for coming down and letting us know.
all right. Thank you very much, folks. Have a nice evening.
Do I have a motion?
And I guess just before I go, the stuff that he was talking about, I had read about that in the waiver as far as the asbestos check and all that stuff. Is there anything, because I've submitted the waiver and the check already, is there anything else that I need to do to speed that process up, or how will I know that it's kind of moving forward, I guess?
Mr. Piper, what you'll want to do is you'll want to touch base with the demolition folks that you worked with you on the waiver, Rachel Brunson or Beth Diefendorf. I would check back with them in 30 days. We can't do anything for 30 days to wait to give anyone that has an interest in the property an opportunity to appeal. But so right now, you wait that 30 days, and then you can get in contact with Beth, Rachel, If there's anything that they need from you, they'll send you a letter. The fact that this is in front of the board tells me that they got all the information from you that they needed. So.
Sure. Okay, so I'll wait the 30 days and then check back with Beth. And then after that, hopefully if we can get that stuff scheduled, maybe we could prioritize it this year. I would be very grateful, and thank you very much again for your time.
Okay, can I have a motion from the board?
Motion.
I'd like to make, go ahead.
Go ahead. Go
All right.
ahead, Annette.
I'd like to make a motion, please.
Go ahead.
Waiver case 5858, address 1755 New York Street. There has been no complaint, excuse me. The owner has submitted a voluntary demolition waiver stating that the property is in such a state of disrepair as to create a serious hazard to the health and the safety of the community. This property, there has been no compliance with the housing orders that were issued against the property, which is vacant, heavily vandalized, dilapidated. All lien holders of record have been notified. It is tax delinquent, I think, if I'm not mistaken. The owner, the deteriorated condition of this property is a blighting influence on the neighborhood. And I'd like to move that this property be ordered demolished according to the voluntary demolition waiver that was submitted by the owner.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
So I just wanted to mention for the record, I just checked online, and online shows no tax delinquency. What was delinquent was shown as paid. There's zero tax delinquency on that property at this time.
Good. Thank you for checking.
The research was done on December 22nd, so it probably hadn't cleared through.
Hadn't caught up yet. Yep. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Pfeiffer.
Thank you very much, folks. Have a good evening.
You too.
Who's next, Dwayne?
Okay, Madam Chair, the only person in the waiting room right now is Holly Lucas. I don't know if she had signed in for a second property, if she was here for a property other than.
Do you want to check with her?
I can bring her back in, but there's no one else. No one else has even popped in and left. This is. But I'll bring her back in.
Okay, we'll just make sure. She doesn't appear to be there. Okay, she probably just didn't log out.
Well, that was probably a dangerous thing for me to do.
Yeah, really.
Just blindly bring her in. So there's no one else. There's no one else in the waiting room to testify. Thank you.
Okay, next case, Jody.
Review case 5840, 262 South Portage Path. At the Housing Appeals Board meeting of January 19th, 2021, the board granted an extension until February 16th, 2021 to complete the electric, plumbing, provide heat, finish windows, provide utilities, install drywall, spray smoke damage, keep the property secure, keep the property free of refuse, and schedule an interior inspection. The exterior only of the property was inspected on February 16th, 2021. There had been no additional progress to the exterior, and I did not receive a phone call or an email from the owner or the contractor.
Interesting.
Goodbye.
Yeah, I don't know what happened. I don't know if something personal happened and that's why they didn't contact me, or in this instance, I wouldn't assume that they've walked away from it.
But we also can't assume that they've done anything.
Correct.
And they were, Jody, would they have been sent notice of the meeting or just gotten at the last meeting?
They were sent notice.
Okay, and so we've heard nothing from them.
No.
And Jody, you said that there was no progress to the exterior or some?
There was no progress to the exterior.
Okay.
The only thing I would have been able to view from the list that they were asked to complete on the exterior would have been to finish the
Windows.
windows. The
Okay.
windows had not been.
Okay, thank you.
So what's your pleasure, folks?
Let's rock and roll.
I would be happy to hear a motion.
Okay. Okay, well, let me stutter through. Okay, review case 5840-262 South Portage Path. Whereas there has been no one to show for this case or have heard or had no contact at all with the people for this address. I move that the house be raised with all costs assessed.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Jody, I would not be surprised if you don't hear from them and you will explain their appeal rights, I assume.
I would think that I probably will be receiving an appeal.
Yeah. Hey, next case.
New case 5852, 115 West Crozier Street. There has been no compliance with housing orders issued against this property, which is vacant, heavily vandalized, dilapidated, heavily fire damaged. The owner's whereabouts are unknown. It is tax delinquent, has been secured by the city, and is not registered. The deteriorated condition of this property is a blighting influence on the neighborhood, and the housing division recommends that it be demolished with all costs assessed.
New case 5852. I'd like to make a motion, please.
Go ahead.
New case 5852, 115 West Crozier Street. There has been no compliance with the housing orders issued against this property, which is vacant, heavily vandalized, dilapidated. It is heavily fire damaged. The owner's whereabouts are unknown. It's tax delinquent, secured by the city, and not registered. The deteriorated condition of this property is a blighting influence on the neighborhood. I move that this property be raised with all costs suitably assessed.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Next case.
New case 5853, 123 West Cuyahoga Falls Avenue. There has been no compliance with housing orders issued against this property, which is vacant, dilapidated, has been secured by the city, and is not registered. The deteriorated condition of this property is a blighting influence on the neighborhood, and the housing division recommends that it be demolished with all costs assessed.
New case. Okay, go ahead, Em.
Okay, new case 5853, 123 West Cuyahoga Falls Avenue, where there has been no compliance with housing orders against this property, which is vacant, dilapidated, secured by the city, not registered. The deteriorated condition of this property is a blighting influence on the neighborhood, and I move we raise with all costs assessed.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries.
New case 5854, 1294 South Hawkins Avenue. There has been no compliance with housing orders issued against this property, which is vacant, dilapidated, tax delinquent, and not registered. The deteriorated condition of this property is a blighting influence on the neighborhood, and the Housing Division recommends that it be demolished with all costs assessed.
New
New case 5. Whoops.
Kathy, you're too slow.
I tell you, I know. It's the meds. Honest, it's the meds.
Will you share?
Yes.
Anyway, new case 5854, the property at 1294 South Hawkins Avenue. In that, there has been no compliance with orders issued against this property. The property is vacant and dilapidated. Property is tax delinquent to the point they never paid any tax on it. The property is not registered, and the deteriorated condition is a blighting influence. I move we raise with cost assessed.
Second.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries.
New case 5855, 352 House Street. There has been no compliance with housing orders issued against this property, which is vacant, heavily vandalized, dilapidated. It is tax delinquent, has been secured by the city, and is not registered. The deteriorated condition of this property is a blighting influence on the neighborhood, and the Housing Division recommends that it be demolished with all costs assessed.
New case 5855, 352 House Street. There has been no compliance with the housing orders issued against this property, which is, oh, I'm sorry. Excuse me. May I make a motion?
Please do.
Been a while. A new case 5855, 352 House Street. There has been no compliance with the housing orders issued against this property, which is vacant, heavily vandalized, dilapidated. It is tax delinquent, secured by the city, and not registered. The deteriorated condition of this property is a blighting influence on the neighborhood, and I move that this property be raised with all costs suitably assessed.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention? Motion carries.
Waiver case 5856, 1191 Beardsley Street. There has been no compliance with housing orders issued against this property, which is vacant, heavily vandalized, dilapidated, the scene of police activity. All lien holders of record have been notified. It is tax delinquent, has been secured by the city, and the owner has submitted a voluntary demolition waiver stating that the property is in such a state of disrepair as to create a serious hazard to the health and safety of the community. The deteriorated condition of this property is a blighting influence on the neighborhood, and the Housing Division recommends that the property be demolished with all costs assessed.
Jody, question. Who's the owner of this property? I see Harmon and Virginia Harrison, and I see an Anita Benage.
That is the power of attorney.
Okay. I didn't see a POA by a name anywhere. Okay, thank you.
Ready? Okay. Waiver case 5856, 1191 Beardsley Street. Whereas there has been no compliance with housing orders issued against this property, which is vacant, heavily vandalized, dilapidated, scene of police activity. All lien holders of record have been notified. It's tax delinquent, has been secured by the city. The owner has submitted a voluntary demolition waiver stating that the property is in such a state of disrepair as to create a serious hazard to the health and safety of the community. And the deteriorated condition of this property is a blighting influence on the neighborhood. I move that the property be raised with all costs assessed.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries.
And the last case is waiver case 5857, 220 Cole Avenue. And that the property is vacant, heavily vandalized, dilapidated. All lien holders of record have been notified. It is tax delinquent, and the owner has submitted a voluntary demolition waiver stating that the property is in such a state of disrepair as to create a serious hazard to the health and safety of the community. The deteriorated condition of this property is a blighting influence on the neighborhood, and the Housing Division recommends that it be demolished with all costs assessed.
May I make a motion?
Please do.
Waiver case 5857, 220 Cole Avenue. The owner has submitted a voluntary demolition waiver stating that the property is in such a state of disrepair as to create a serious hazard to the health and the safety of the community. The property is vacant, heavily vandalized, dilapidated. All lien holders of record have been notified, and it is tax delinquent. The deteriorated condition of this property is a blighting influence on the neighborhood, and I move that the property be ordered demolished according to the demolition waiver submitted.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Any brilliant words for the good of the order?
Yes. Happy Mardi Gras.
Yeah, yee!
Maybe next year we can have a king cake.
Yeah.
Our next meeting is March 16th, 2021